The lunch hall stretched wider than 3 football fields, filled with creatures that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. Lily Carter picked at her meal tray, watching a group of blue-skinned Telmorians argue loudly about something in their clicking language. Across from them, a pair of rock-like granite warriors sat in complete silence, probably communicating through vibrations she couldn't detect. This was her 3rd week at Galactic Defense Academy, and she still felt like she was visiting an alien zoo, except she was one of the exhibits. Her datapad showed tomorrow's schedule: hand-to-hand combat training, weapons certification, tactical simulation. Standard stuff, though nothing about this place felt standard. Earth had only joined the Galactic Coalition 2 years ago, and humans were still the new kids trying to prove they belonged. Most species had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Humans were barely off their own planet. Someone's shadow fell across her table. Lily looked up slowly. The creature standing over her had to duck to avoid the ceiling panels. His scales were dark green and looked thick as armor plating. 2 small horns curved back from his skull, and his eyes were yellow with vertical pupils. A Gorvanian, if she remembered the species charts correctly. His 3 friends stood behind him, all different species, but all wearing the same sneering expressions. "You are sitting in my spot, human," the Gorvanian said. His voice rumbled like rocks grinding together. Lily glanced around the massive hall. Hundreds of empty tables surrounded them. "There are plenty of other seats." "I like this one." He reached down and flicked her datapad off the table. It clattered across the floor, screen cracking against the stone tiles. She watched it skid to a stop near someone's feet. That datapad had cost her 2 months of savings. The Academy provided basic equipment, but personal devices came out of your own pocket. Lily took a slow breath through her nose and stood up. She was 5'4". The Gorvanian was at least 7 feet tall and probably weighed 300 pounds. "Excuse me," she said quietly, walking around him to retrieve her datapad. "Where do you think you are going, soft-worlder?" He stepped sideways, blocking her path. Lily stopped. Around them, conversations died down. Other cadets were watching now. This was entertainment for them, or maybe a familiar show they had seen before with different actors. "I need to get my datapad," she said. The Gorvanian smiled, showing teeth that looked designed for tearing meat. He walked over to her datapad, raised one massive boot, and brought it down hard. The device crunched under his weight. He twisted his foot for good measure, grinding it into the floor. "Oops," he said. "Accidents happen in training academies." His friends laughed. A few other cadets turned away, suddenly very interested in their own meals. Lily stared at the crushed remains of her datapad for a long moment. She could file a complaint. There were procedures for this kind of thing. But procedures took time, required evidence, meant going through channels. And from what she had observed in 3 weeks, the instructors didn't seem particularly interested in cadet drama. She looked up at the Gorvanian. "What's your name?" He seemed surprised by the question. "I am Drath, daughter of a weak world. Why do you want to know?" "Just curious," Lily said. She bent down, gathered the pieces of her datapad, and walked away without another word. Behind her, she heard Drath say something to his friends. They laughed again, louder this time. The sound followed her all the way out of the lunch hall. Her quarters were small but private, one of the few benefits of being a species with specific atmospheric requirements. The environmental controls hummed softly, keeping the oxygen levels and temperature where human bodies worked best. Lily dumped the datapad pieces on her desk and sat down on the edge of her bed. She had dealt with bullies before. High school had been full of them. Basic training in the army had its share too. Drath was bigger and stronger than human bullies, but the basic psychology was probably the same. He was establishing dominance, testing the new arrival, seeing if she would break or fight back. The problem was that fighting back in the traditional sense would not work here. Drath outweighed her by 150 pounds and had natural armor. If she tried to punch him, she would probably break her own hand. Going through official channels might work eventually, but it would also mark her as someone who ran to authority figures instead of handling her own problems. In a military academy, that was almost worse than being bullied. So she would have to be patient, Watch, learn, find another way. Lily picked up the largest piece of her datapad and examined it. The screen was shattered, but the internal components might be salvageable. She had always been good with her hands, good at fixing things. Her father had taught her basic electronics repair when she was 10. "Everything can be fixed if you are patient enough," he used to say. She opened her footlocker and pulled out a small toolkit she had brought from Earth. The Academy had better tools available in the engineering labs, but those required authorization to access. For now, she would work with what she had. 2 hours later, she had managed to extract the memory core and connect it to her backup reader. The device flickered to life, displaying her schedule and notes. Not perfect, but functional. Good enough for now. Tomorrow was hand-to-hand combat training. She wondered if Drath would be in her session. Probably. The Academy seemed to enjoy throwing different species together to see how they worked things out. Instructor Horvath, the insectoid Kelthrin who ran combat training, had a reputation for being old school. He believed cadets should handle their own problems unless someone ended up in medical. Lily pulled up her notes on Gorvanian physiology. If she was going to survive the next few months, she needed to understand what she was dealing with. The file showed detailed anatomical charts, heavy bone structure, thick dermal plating, impressive muscle mass. But there had to be weaknesses. Every species had them. Earth had taught humans that lesson over and over. Lions were stronger than humans, bears were bigger, eagles had better eyesight. But humans were still here, and most of those animals were not. She studied the charts until lights out, memorizing details, looking for patterns. When she finally lay down to sleep, her mind was still working through possibilities and strategies. Drath thought he had won today. He had broken her property and humiliated her in front of witnesses. He probably expected her to avoid him or report him or maybe even request a transfer. He was going to be disappointed. The training arena smelled like sweat and ozone. Gravity panels along the walls allowed instructors to adjust conditions for different species, but today everything was set to standard. Lily wrapped her hands carefully, checking each finger for proper support. Around her, 40 other cadets prepared for combat training. Instructor Horvath stood at the center of the arena, all 6 of his limbs moving in that unsettling way that marked his species. His compound eyes could see in almost every direction at once, which made it nearly impossible to slack off during his sessions. He clicked his mandibles together for attention. "Today we practice controlled sparring," Horvath announced. His translator converted his clicks into something resembling speech. "Partners have been assigned randomly. First round, 15 minutes. Non-lethal contact only. Begin when I signal." A holographic board appeared listing pairs. Lily scanned for her name and felt her stomach tighten. Of course, Drath. The Gorvanian was already looking at her from across the arena, that same predatory smile on his face. His friends nudged each other and pointed. This was going to be entertainment for them again. Horvath signaled the start. Lily walked to her designated circle and faced Drath. The rules were simple. Stay in the circle. No weapons, no killing strikes. Everything else was fair game. Instructors would intervene if things went too far, but too far had a pretty generous definition in Galactic Defense Academy. "Ready to learn your place, soft-worlder?" Drath asked, cracking his knuckles. Each hand had 4 thick fingers tipped with claws. Lily said nothing. She dropped into a basic stance, hands up, weight balanced. She had trained in 3 different martial arts back on Earth: boxing, Muay Thai, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. None of them were designed for fighting 7-foot reptilian aliens with armor plating, but the principles might still apply. Drath laughed. "You think those tiny hands will hurt me?" He charged forward like she expected, trying to use his size and strength to overwhelm her immediately. Lily sidestepped, not trying to block or counter, just moving out of the way. Drath's momentum carried him past her. He spun quickly, irritation flashing in his yellow eyes. He came again, this time with more control. He threw a heavy punch aimed at her head. Lily ducked under it and circled away. Another punch. She slipped to the side, a grabbing attempt. She stepped back out of range. "Stand still and fight," Drath snarled. Around them, other pairs were actually exchanging blows. The sounds of impact echoed through the arena. Some cadets were already on the ground, having been overpowered or outmaneuvered. But in Lily's circle, no contact had been made yet. She could see Horvath watching, from his elevated platform, making notes on his datapad, probably marking her as passive or afraid. That was fine. Let him think that. Drath rushed again, and this time Lily timed her movement differently. Instead of moving away, she moved forward and to the side, staying just inside his reach but outside his power zone. Her elbow snapped out, catching him in the ribs. Not hard enough to damage that thick hide, but enough to register contact. Drath grunted in surprise more than pain. He swung backhanded at her, but she was already gone, circling behind him. She kicked at the back of his knee, a quick pop designed to disrupt his balance. He stumbled slightly. "You fight like a coward," he said, breathing harder now. Lily stayed silent. Words were a waste of energy. Drath was already wasting plenty of energy on his own, throwing heavy strikes that missed, chasing her around the circle. She could see the pattern now. His species was built for short, explosive power. Ambush predators, probably, strong and fast in the initial attack, but not designed for extended combat. Humans were different. Humans had evolved chasing prey across miles of savanna, running until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Human bodies were cooling systems on legs, capable of regulating temperature through sweat, maintaining steady output for hours. Drath's species probably could not even sweat. He was already breathing through his mouth. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Drath's strikes came slower now, his movements less precise. Lily had landed maybe 20 touches, none powerful enough to hurt him, but all scoring points under the training rules. She had not tried to hurt him because she could not yet. But she was learning how he moved, where his balance points were, how quickly he could recover from missed attacks. A smaller cadet next to their circle went down hard, knocked unconscious by their opponent. Medical drones zipped in immediately. Horvath clicked approval at the victor, a mantis-like creature who had used superior speed to land a decisive strike. Drath saw it too. He was running out of time to make an impression. He gathered himself and lunged with everything he had, both arms extended to grab Lily in a crushing hold. It was the move she had been waiting for. She dropped low under his arms and drove her shoulder into his midsection, not to hurt him, but to use his own momentum against him. The impact did nothing to Drath's armored body, but his forward motion combined with her low position sent him stumbling. His foot caught on her leg, exactly where she had positioned it. Physics did the rest. 300 pounds of Gorvanian warrior crashed face first into the arena floor. The sound echoed. Several nearby matches paused. Drath lay there for a moment, stunned more by surprise than injury. Lily stepped back to her starting position and dropped into her stance again, ready to continue. Horvath's voice cut through the arena. "Time, all pairs stop." Drath pushed himself up slowly, shaking his head. There was dirt on his scales and fury in his eyes. Around them, other cadets were looking over with new expressions. Not mockery this time. Interest maybe, or concern. "Scores will be posted tonight," Horvath said. "Dismissed." Lily unwrapped her hands and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she heard Drath say something venomous in his own language. His friends responded, but their voices sounded less confident than before. In the changing area, a small herbivore species cadet approached her cautiously. She had purple fur and huge eyes that reminded Lily of a rabbit back home. "That was brave," the cadet said quietly. "I am Bryn." "Lily." Bryn glanced around to make sure no one else was listening. "Drath has hurt 3 cadets badly enough that they transferred out. You should be careful." "Thanks for the warning," Lily said. Bryn nodded and hurried away, still nervous about being seen talking to the human. Lily finished changing and headed back to her quarters. Tonight she would review the match in her mind, analyzing every movement, every mistake. Drath would be doing the same, but probably with more anger than analysis. This was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Someone had been in her quarters. Lily knew it the moment she opened the door. Nothing looked obviously different, but things were slightly off. Her bed was made, but the pillow was at the wrong angle. Her footlocker was closed, but the lock was scratched. She did a quick inventory and found her backup uniform missing, along with her spare boots. She did not bother reporting it. What would she say? Someone moved my pillow. The uniform and boots were frustrating to lose, but she could requisition replacements. This was a message. Drath was telling her he could get to her anywhere, anytime. The next 3 days brought more incidents. During a zero-gravity navigation exercise, her helmet seal mysteriously failed, forcing her to abort the simulation. In the weapons lab, her training rifle had been set to dangerous overcharge levels. She caught it before firing, but the instructor still wrote her up for not checking her equipment properly. During a tactical planning session, her holographic display glitched repeatedly, making her look unprepared. None of it was provable. None of it was serious enough for official intervention. But it was constant, wearing her down piece by piece. She saw Drath watching her in the corridors, that satisfied smile on his face. His friends spread rumors that humans were too fragile for real military work, that Earth's admission to the coalition had been a political favor, not based on merit. Lily endured. She showed up to every class, completed every assignment, passed every evaluation. Her scores remained high despite the sabotage. She did not complain. She did not show fear. And that seemed to make Drath angrier than anything else. On the 5th day, it escalated. Morning formation had gathered all cadets in the central parade ground. Horvath was giving announcements about upcoming evaluations when Drath's voice boomed across the assembly. I challenged the human Lily Carter to an honored duel. Silence fell. Even Horvath stopped speaking, his compound eyes focusing on Drath. Honor duels were part of Academy tradition dating back thousands of years. They allowed cadets to settle serious disputes through supervised combat. Both parties had to agree, and the Academy provided medical support, but the fights were real. People got hurt. Lily felt hundreds of eyes turned toward her. She kept her expression neutral, her breathing steady. This was what Drath had been building toward: public humiliation. If she refused, she would lose all credibility. If she accepted, he would have the chance to hurt her badly, maybe badly enough to force her out of the Academy. Horvath clicked his mandibles. Cadet Drath, you understand the seriousness of issuing such a challenge. I do, Instructor. This human has dishonored my name by refusing to submit to my authority. I claim my right to resolve this properly. The human has done nothing against regulations, Horvath said. Then let her prove she belongs here by accepting my challenge. Drath looked directly at Lily. Unless she is too weak to defend her honor. Every instinct told Lily to refuse. Drath was bigger, stronger, had natural weapons she could not match. In a real fight with minimal rules, he would destroy her. But something else stirred inside her, something that had kept humans alive on a planet full of creatures stronger and faster than them. Stubbornness, refusal to quit, the absolute bone-deep knowledge that backing down now meant backing down forever. I accept, Lily said clearly. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Some cadets looked shocked, others looked eager for entertainment. Bryn, standing 2 rows back, looked terrified. Horvath studied Lily for a long moment. You understand this is serious combat. The medical team will intervene for life-threatening injuries, but you will likely be hurt. I understand. The duel will take place tomorrow at noon in the main arena. Standard rules apply. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or referee judgment. You have 24 hours to prepare. Horvath did not sound happy about this. Dismissed. The assembly broke up into clusters of talking cadets. Lily walked away before anyone could approach her. She needed to think. She had just agreed to fight a creature that outweighed her by more than 100 pounds, had armor plating, natural weapons, and combat training from a warrior species. Back in her quarters, she pulled up every file she could find on Gorvanian physiology and combat styles. Her datapad, jury-rigged but functional, displayed the information slowly. Gorvanians were ambush predators from a world with slightly lower gravity than Earth. They were explosive fighters, relying on overwhelming initial force. Their armor was thick across the torso and arms, but thinner at joints. Their endurance was poor compared to pursuit predators. They could not regulate body temperature effectively in sustained combat. She cross-referenced with human physiological data. Earth had 1.2 times standard gravity. Every day of Lily's life had been spent fighting against stronger gravity than most species in the galaxy experienced. Her muscles, her bones, her cardiovascular system were all built to a higher standard than she had realized. The Academy's standard gravity felt light to her, though she had trained herself not to show it. And humans were pursuit predators, not the strongest, not the fastest, but capable of maintaining steady effort longer than almost anything else. Run an antelope to exhaustion, chase prey until it collapsed from heat stroke. Humans could sweat, could cool down, could keep going when other species had to stop. The duel would not be quick. If Lily could survive the initial assault, if she could make it a contest of endurance rather than power, maybe she had a chance. She spent the next 12 hours preparing. She ran combat simulations in her mind, visualizing movements, planning contingencies. She reviewed her martial arts training, adapting techniques for an opponent with armor. She studied footage of previous honor duels, learning how the referees judged, what was allowed, where the boundaries were. Other cadets came by her door but left when she did not answer. Someone slid a note underneath. When she read it later, it was from Bryn. "You do not have to do this. No one would blame you for withdrawing." But they would, and more importantly, she would blame herself. That night, Lily barely slept. When she did, she dreamed of running across endless plains, chasing something she could not see, driven by something she could not name. When morning came, she was ready, or as ready as anyone could be for what was coming. The main arena was packed with spectators. Every cadet who could get clearance was there, along with several instructors and even some administrative staff. Word had spread through the academy like wildfire. The human was going to fight Drath. Most people were betting on how quickly she would go down, not whether she would lose. Lily walked onto the arena floor in her training gear, light and flexible. Across from her, Drath wore minimal clothing, showing off his muscled frame and scaled armor. His friends were in the front row, already celebrating a victory that had not happened yet. The energy in the room felt like a sporting event, entertainment before lunch. Horvath stood at the center of the combat circle, marking boundaries with holographic projectors. Medical drones hovered at strategic points, ready to intervene. Two other instructors sat at the judges' table, official witnesses to whatever was about to happen. "Combatants approach," Horvath commanded. Lily and Drath walked to the center. This close, the size difference was even more obvious. Drath's shadow fell across her like a storm cloud. "The rules are simple," Horvath said, his translator giving his clicks weight and authority. "Fight until submission, incapacitation, or until I stop you. Lethal force is prohibited. Medical intervention will occur for serious injury. Honor is at stake, but so are your futures. Do not make me regret allowing this." He looked at both of them. "Do you understand?" "Yes, Instructor," Lily said. Drath just smiled and nodded. "Return to your marks." They walked to opposite sides of the circle. Lily rolled her shoulders, shaking out tension. Her hands were wrapped, her hair tied back. She had eaten a light breakfast, enough for energy, but not enough to slow her down. Everything she could control, she had controlled. Everything else was up to how the fight went. Horvath raised one limb. "Begin." Drath exploded forward immediately, exactly as Lily expected. His species fought like avalanches, all their power in the first devastating rush. He covered the distance in 3 strides, throwing a punch that would have crushed her skull if it connected. Lily moved, not backward, which would have let him drive her into the barrier, not sideways, which would have given him space to adjust. Forward and to the left, inside his guard where his longer reach became a disadvantage. His fist whistled past her ear, close enough to feel the air move. She struck at his exposed ribs, 3 quick punches to the same spot. Against his armor, they did almost nothing, but they registered contact. She danced away before his return strike could land. Drath turned to face her, breathing slightly harder. Running will not save you. Lily did not respond. Talking wasted oxygen. She needed every advantage she could get. He came again, this time with a combination. Punch, elbow, grabbing attempt. Lily slipped the punch, blocked the elbow at the joint where his armor was thinner, and ducked under the grab. She kicked at his lead knee, not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to make him shift his weight. As he adjusted, she hit him twice more in the ribs, same spot as before. The crowd was getting louder. They had expected a quick finish. Instead, they were watching something more complex. Drath pressed forward aggressively, using his reach and power to try to corner Lily against the barriers. She stayed mobile, circling, making him chase her. Every time he committed to an attack, she was already moving, landing quick counter-strikes that accumulated like raindrops wearing away stone. 3 minutes in, Drath was breathing hard through his mouth. His species could not. Sweat could not cool down efficiently. Every movement generated heat his body struggled to dissipate. Lily was breathing harder too, but steady, controlled. Her body was doing what it had evolved to do. Drath tried to grab her with both hands, a crushing bear hug that would have ended the fight. Lily saw it coming, dropped to one knee, and drove her elbow into his inner thigh where the armor was thin. He grunted, the first sound of actual pain, and his grab missed. She rolled away as he tried to kick her. 5 minutes. Drath's movements were getting sloppy, not slow yet, but less precise. Frustration was taking over, making him predictable. He abandoned technique and just tried to land one devastating hit. Lily let him chase her, circling the arena, making him work for every inch. Horvath watched from his platform, his compound eyes missing nothing. He had pulled up data files during the fight, his datapad showing information he should have reviewed weeks ago. Earth's gravity, human evolution, persistence hunting. The things he had not bothered to learn before dismissing humans as weak. 7 minutes. Drath was slowing down significantly now. His chest heaved with each breath. Sweat would have cooled him, but his body could not produce it. Heat built up inside him like an overworked engine with no radiator. Lily had barely broken a sweat. Her breathing was elevated but manageable. She could keep this pace for an hour if needed. Drath knew he was losing. Lily could see it in his eyes the moment predator became prey. He lunged desperately, throwing himself at her with everything left. Lily sidestepped smoothly, and this time she did not retreat. She moved with him, staying in his blind spot as his momentum carried him forward. Her leg swept his ankle at the perfect moment. Physics finished the fight. 300 pounds of overheated, exhausted Gorvanian crashed to the arena floor with a sound like a small earthquake. Drath tried to push himself up, but his arms shook. He made it to his hands and knees before collapsing again. Lily stood over him, ready to continue if needed, but Drath did not get up. He lay there, chest heaving, utterly spent. He had given everything in the first few minutes, and now there was nothing left. Horvath's voice echoed through the suddenly quiet arena. "The match is over. Victory by incapacitation to Cadet Carter." The silence that followed was so complete that Lily could hear her own heartbeat. Then someone started clapping. Bryn, standing in the upper section, applauding loudly despite her obvious fear. A few others joined in, then more. Within seconds, half the arena was making noise, though whether it was approval or simply shock was hard to tell. Lily stepped back as medical drones descended on Drath. He would be fine after cooling down and hydration. His pride was more injured than his body. She looked up at Horvath, who was staring at her with an expression that might have been respect or concern or both. She had won, but something told her the real consequences were just beginning. The medical team cleared Drath 20 minutes later, overheated and exhausted, but no permanent damage. He pushed away the attending drones and staggered to his feet, refusing help from his friends. The look he gave Lily before leaving the arena was pure venom mixed with something else. Confusion, maybe, or the first crack of doubt in his worldview. Lily sat on a bench near the arena wall, drinking water and letting her heart rate settle. Other cadets walked past, some nodding respectfully, others whispering to each other. The crowd was dispersing, but the energy in the room had changed. Something fundamental had shifted. Horvath descended from his platform and approached her. His multiple limbs moved in patterns she was starting to recognize as agitation. He stood there for a moment, looking down at her with those compound eyes that could see too much. "Cadet Carter, walk with me." It was not a request. Lily stood and followed him out of the arena, through corridors that emptied as cadets saw them coming. They ended up in his office, a utilitarian space filled with tactical displays and commendation plaques from his long career. Horvath closed the door and turned to face her. "I made a mistake." Lily waited. She had learned that sometimes the best response was silence. "I should have researched your species properly before accepting you into this program," he continued. "I should have understood what Earth's environment meant for human development. I should have intervened when Drath began his harassment." He clicked his mandibles together sharply. "I assumed you were weak because you are small. That is inexcusable for someone in my position." "You stopped the fight before anyone was seriously hurt," Lily said. "That matters." "The fight should never have happened." Horvath pulled up displays showing Earth data. "Your planet has 1.2 times our standard gravity. You evolved alongside megafauna predators that could kill you easily. Your species survived not through strength, but through endurance and intelligence. Every day you have been here, you have been operating in gravity that feels light to you against species who have never experienced your homeworld's pressure." He looked at her directly. "You were never weak. I was ignorant." Lily did not know what to say to that. Instructors did not usually admit mistakes, especially to cadets. "Drath will face consequences for his harassment pattern," Horvath said. "I have documentation of equipment sabotage, theft of your belongings, and multiple violations of conduct codes. He will be disciplined appropriately." "What happens now?" Lily asked. "Now I do my job properly." Horvath opened a communication channel. "All instructors, conference room 3, immediate meeting. Topic: comprehensive review of human species specifications and appropriate training modifications." Within an hour, Lily found herself standing in front of 20 instructors from different departments, explaining human physiology, Earth's environment, and the evolutionary pressures that had shaped her species. Some instructors asked intelligent questions. Others looked embarrassed that they had not done this research themselves. The Academy's position changed rapidly after that. New protocols were implemented. Harassment investigations became mandatory rather than optional. Equipment sabotage was elevated to serious offense status, and human training parameters were adjusted to reflect actual capability rather than assumed limitations. But the biggest change was in how other cadets treated her. Bryn approached her in the lunch hall 2 days later, no longer afraid to be seen together. "May I sit with you?" "Of course," Lily said. They were joined moments later by 3 other cadets, then 5 more. Within a week, Lily's table was full every meal, a mixed group of species who had one thing in common. They had all been targets at some point, Drath's victims or victims of others like him. They had watched Lily stand up and not break, and that meant something to them. Drath himself went through dramatic changes. His friends abandoned him after his defeat, not wanting to be associated with failure. He was assigned extra duties and mandatory counseling sessions. His reputation, built on intimidation, collapsed completely. 3 weeks after the duel, Lily was studying alone in the library when someone approached her table. She looked up to find Drath standing there, looking uncomfortable in a way that had nothing to do with physical presence. "May I speak with you?" he asked quietly. Lily gestured to the empty chair. Drath sat down, which seemed to cost him significant effort. Pride was a heavy thing to swallow. "The counselor has made me understand things," he said, struggling with the words. "On my world, strength is everything. The strong lead, the weak follow. That is how we survived. But here, with so many species, that thinking does not work." He met her eyes. "I treated you badly because I thought you were weak. I was wrong. I apologize." Lily studied him carefully. This could be manipulation, another angle of attack. But his body language suggested genuine discomfort, the kind that came from having your worldview shattered and rebuilt. "Apology accepted," she said. "But words are easy, actions matter more." I know, Drath stood. I will do better. He left without waiting for a response. Bryn, who had been shelving books nearby and clearly eavesdropping, rushed over the moment he was gone. Do you believe him? She asked. I believe he is trying, Lily said. Whether he succeeds is up to him. The next few weeks proved her right. Drath did not transform overnight into a model cadet, but he stopped bullying. He kept to himself mostly, working hard, speaking little. When he saw Lily in corridors, he nodded respectfully and kept walking. Small changes, but real ones. Horvath used the incident as a teaching moment in his classes. He discussed the danger of assumptions based on appearance, the importance of understanding your allies and opponents, the value of different strengths beyond physical power. Some cadets listened, others did not, but at least the conversation was happening. One evening, Lily was running laps around the academy track when she noticed several other cadets trying to keep her pace. They fell behind after the second kilometer, gasping. Human endurance was still shocking to species who had never needed to run down prey across vast distances. Bryn met her after the run looking amazed. How do you do that? You barely look tired. My species hunted by never giving up, Lily said, stretching. We are not. The fastest or strongest, but we keep going when everything else stops. That explains a lot about what happened with Drath, Bryn said thoughtfully. He was trying to win a sprint, but you turned it into a marathon. Lily smiled, something like that. As they walked back to the dormitories together, Lily thought about how much had changed in a few weeks. She had arrived as an outsider, dismissed as weak. Now she was surrounded by friends, respected by instructors, and had helped shift the entire academy culture toward something healthier. Earth had taught humanity to survive through adaptation, persistence, and the refusal to quit. Those lessons worked just as well in space as they had on the savannah millions of years ago. 6 months passed like water flowing over stones. Steady, inevitable, wearing away rough edges and creating something new. The Galactic Defense Academy was still the same buildings and equipment, but what happened inside them had fundamentally changed. Lily stood at attention in the assembly hall along with 300 other cadets. Today was advancement ceremony, marking the halfway point of their training. Those who had failed or transferred were gone. Those who remained were being recognized for their achievements. Horvath stood at the podium, his compound eyes scanning the assembled cadets. Age and experience marked every movement he made. Behind him, a holographic display showed names and commendations. This class has been exceptional for many reasons, Horvath began. You have overcome challenges, adapted to new situations, and learned that strength comes in many forms. His mandibles clicked in what might have been satisfaction. Several cadets require special recognition today. The first few names were cadets who had excelled in specific areas. Engineering innovation, tactical simulation victories, diplomatic problem solving. Each received polite applause as they stepped forward for their commendations. Cadet Lily Carter, Horvath announced. Lily walked forward, aware of hundreds of eyes on her. The whispers had never completely stopped. 6 months later, people still talked about the human who had defeated Drath. But now the story was told with respect rather than mockery. Horvath handed her a small crystal plaque. For excellence in tactical studies and demonstrating that understanding your opponent matters more than overpowering them. You have taught this. Academy as much as it has taught you. Lily accepted the commendation and returned to formation. Bryn, standing next to her, vibrated with excitement. The purple-furred cadet had blossomed over the past months, no longer afraid to speak up or participate fully. After the ceremony, cadets dispersed to various celebrations. Lily found herself surrounded by friends, a mixed group that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. A Telmorian engineer who was teaching her their mathematical system. A granite warrior who moved through meditation techniques. A Kelloran pilot who wanted to understand human reaction times. And Bryn, who had become closer than a sister. Speech, someone called out, others joined in. Lily shook her head, but they persisted. Finally, she held up her hands for quiet. I am not good at speeches, she said. But I can tell you what I have learned here. We are all different. Different bodies, different cultures, different ways of thinking. That is not weakness. That is strength. No single species has all the answers, but together, working with respect and understanding, we become something better than any of us alone. It was simple, maybe too simple, but the faces around her suggested the message landed. Later, walking back to her quarters, Lily found an unexpected figure waiting by her door. Drath stood there awkwardly, holding something small. I made this in engineering class, he said, holding it out. Replacement datapad, better than your old one. Lily took it carefully. The device was sleek, custom-built with specifications beyond standard issue. Thank you. I wanted to say something else, Drath continued, each word clearly difficult. Back home, we are taught that showing weakness means death. The strong survive, the weak do not. But you showed me that refusing to give up is not weakness. It is another kind of strength. He paused. I am trying to learn that. How is it going? Lily asked. Slowly, something that might have been a smile crossed his face. But I keep trying. A human taught me that persistence matters. After he left, Lily entered her quarters and sat on her bed with the new datapad. The device was sophisticated, clearly representing hours of work. Drath could have just apologized with words. Instead, he had built something useful with his own hands. Actions over words, just as she had told him months ago. The next morning brought new challenges, advanced combat simulations that required multi-species cooperation, tactical problems with no clear solutions, physical endurance tests that pushed everyone to their limits in different ways. But the atmosphere had changed. Cadets worked together now, combining their different strengths rather than competing to prove superiority. Horvath pulled Lily aside after a particularly complex simulation. Your squad's approach was unconventional. We used everyone's abilities, Lily explained. The Telmorians calculated optimal vectors, the Granite Warriors provided stable defense positions, the Kellorans handled high-speed maneuvers, and I coordinated timing because humans are good at reading patterns across different species. In Drath, heavy assault when needed. He is very good at breaking through fortified positions. Horvath clicked thoughtfully. 6 months ago, that squad composition would have failed immediately due to internal conflict. 6 months ago, none of us understood each other, Lily said. You realize that Galactic Command is watching your progress, Horvath said. Human integration into the coalition military depends partly on how well your species performs here. There is pressure on you that other cadets do not face. I know, Lily said, but I am not doing this for politics. I am doing this because it matters. That attitude is exactly why you are succeeding. Horvath paused. I have been asked to compile a report on human training integration for other academies. Would you be willing to contribute? What would you need from me? Your perspective, what worked, what did not, what other humans should know before they arrive. Horvath shifted his weight. A gesture she had learned meant uncertainty. And perhaps what instructors should know about not making the same mistakes I did. Lily agreed. Over the following weeks, she worked with Horvath and other instructors to create comprehensive guidelines, not just for humans, but for any new species joining the academy. Understanding over assumption, research before judgment, recognition that strength came in many forms, not just physical power. The document was distributed across the coalition military network. Lily received messages from humans at other academies thanking her for making their transitions easier. She also received messages from non-human cadets who appreciated the focus on understanding rather than stereotyping. One evening, Lily sat on the observation deck watching stars she had only dreamed about as a child on Earth. Bryn found her there. Thinking deep thoughts, the small cadet asked, settling beside her. Thinking about how strange life is, Lily said. 6 months ago, I was sitting alone in the lunch hall, trying to stay invisible. Now I am writing training manuals and getting messages from across the galaxy. You changed things, Bryn said simply. Not just for yourself, for everyone. I just refused to quit. That is what changed things. Bryn looked out at the stars. Most people give up when things get hard. You did not. That inspired others not to give up either. They sat in comfortable silence, watching distant suns burn across impossible distances. Somewhere out there, other humans were arriving at other academies, facing their own challenges. Some would succeed, some would fail, but they would all have slightly easier paths because one stubborn human had refused to back down when a bully tried to break her. Earth had taught humanity many lessons across millions of years of evolution. Hunt with patience. Outlast your prey. Never give up, no matter how impossible the odds. Work together because alone you are weak, but together you are unstoppable. Those lessons had carried humans from African plains to the stars. And now, on a training academy orbiting a distant world, those same lessons were teaching the galaxy something new. Humanity had arrived, and they were not going anywhere.